Good morning. Welcome to PWR Today, Wednesday morning. It's June 24th, 2020. On the man they call Meathead, doing a little business real quick before we get to Matthew Thomas. Again, Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Fight TV, all those places that you listen to podcasts. Make sure you're giving us a like and a subscribe. That way you can get your notifications when we have new content. Help us out. We'll give you free content, just like this program right here. So it's Wednesday morning, and every Wednesday morning we're talking to Matthew Thomas. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning. How are you today?
Doing great. So our topic today is going to be the finale of the Last Ride documentary with the Undertaker. I just finished it right before we went on the air, and wow. I mean, I don't know if I have words yet to describe what I saw. I mean, granted, we watched the finale, episode 5, but I've seen the other 4 episodes. I feel complete. We'll go into a little more detail in a bit, but Matthew, overall, I feel complete. I feel like I watched a 20-year show or a 30-year show that the season finale, the series finale, the last episode was wrapped up. I feel good.
Would you say pretty confidently that this is the best piece of filmmaking that the network has done?
Hot take, yes. You know, give me time to watch some of their other stuff. But if we're talking hot takes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's get it into some film festivals. Let's get it nominated for an Oscar. Let's, do what we got to do.
No, I mean, this really, unless there's something that I'm missing, I think this was their first take at kind of a long-form documentary. I don't know of anything to this extent that they have done, and I think they knocked it out of the park. And what was so interesting with this was, this was filmed over the course of several years, but it was not just a modern-day retrospective on something in the past. This was something that was the past, but it brought us pretty much up to present day.
Literally, when it said 2 months later,
yeah.
I mean, we're talking that was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to have that hot and fresh right out of the oven, WWE's strong suit has and always will be production value. And it shines right through this. Again, I don't need to, bow at the altar, right? But I know good content when I see good content. Let's talk about it now. We start off the episode, and the hint was dropped at the end of episode 4 that, if Taker was going to get that one more match after almost hurting himself in the Goldberg match where Goldberg was concussed and Taker almost got hurt real bad, if he was going to get one more match, who would it be against? The consensus across the business right now, and we don't talk about it enough, but really the consensus across the business right now, pound for pound, step for step, move for move, storytelling, all of it, 5 tools, is AJ Styles. I mean, AJ Styles is the man in the business right now. And, I mean, he's at the top of his game. He's, it's almost like a Major League Baseball player that's really learned how to hit, and he's still got the speed to go with the young guys, that kind of thing. So, we go back and forth, and you get the perspective of Mark. And what I really understood, and I really get this, Matthew. We'll get to you in a second, but I really understood the fact that he could retire at any time. His legacy is already cemented. But an alpha, like an Undertaker, or somebody that just strives to be the best in their profession, wants to go out on their terms. They want to be able to be known as the best. They seek perfection. While we never attain it in life, we seek perfection. That's why, a lot of people that retire love the game of golf. The carrot of perfection is dangled out there in front of you all the time. Triple H, we choked, it was a couple weeks ago now. I called Triple H the wrestler whisperer after the Ric Flair documentary and the Undertaker, where Triple H really breathed life into these two guys again, because there was a moment in here where Ric Flair says to the Undertaker, "Thank you." After I believe they were in Toronto for their WrestleMania match.
Yeah.
And Taker said to him, "I don't understand what you mean," because the life of wrestling had gotten beaten out of Ric Flair when he was in WCW. And we watched that. We watched that live. Eric Bischoff really drove the passion out of Ric Flair in that company. And now Taker was suffering from this too. I really do understand that. I may not be the best in my profession at whatever I do, but I strive for the best. And the phrase that Triple H used was chasing that dragon. It can be like a drug. It can be like an addiction where you're chasing that dragon. You have your professional pride, you have your, desire to perform at the highest level and to really master your craft. And then B, on the other side, you have the people in your family, your love, your wife, your children, other people around you that would really like their time with you now before you leave this plane. So it's a constant struggle back and forth. You've got a very supportive wife in Michelle McCool who don't want to see you hurt, but you know what? If you can do it in the safest possible way, go get it. Go get what you need. And unfortunately, he was chasing that dragon because he'd have an okay match, feel good enough to go for another one, and then have a dud match, and then a vicious cycle, have to go back out to erase the memory of that bad match and make yourself feel better about it. I feel, and this is, Dave Hero and I have talked about this, and we disagree, but I feel I might be 100% right on this. I'm absolutely happy with Undertaker riding off into the sunset. Not only did I mark out as a fan of the American Badass Undertaker, but this is how he left. He doesn't need to be in an arena of 80,000 people. It doesn't have to be WrestleMania. The man is happy. He's content. His soul is at rest. I think his career is resting in pieces.
Yeah. And I want to say that my opinion on that has changed since the last time that we spoke on this. I think I was lobbying for AJ Styles being the last opponent, but it actually happening in front of a live audience. But after watching this last episode, as strange as this year has been for everything, but professional wrestling, as strange as the empty arenas have been, as strange as Mania was this past year, I think it offered something that he would not have gotten otherwise. This Boneyard match took place because they were dealing with the hand that they had been dealt and the circumstances, but it also offered a cinematic experience where you could cut when you needed to, where the match could come across as spotless as it could be produced. And that visual of him riding off into the night and the multiple Undertakers that you got in that match, you could possibly do it in an arena, but you could not do it that seamless in the arena. And that controlled environment actually gave them a match. Call it a match, call it a piece of filmmaking from start to finish, where everybody looked great. Taker looked fantastic. We got to see the different variations of Taker. And I think that you're right. I think that this might be as close as he is going to get with being satisfied, in the context that this is something that is not going to be replicated, most likely under other circumstances. This is a very rare situation where you have got this off-site match. And I mean, to encapsulate all the different versions of Taker, to get him riding off into the sunset. And here's the thing, The Undertaker is much more of a cinematic character than any character in the history of professional wrestling. And I think to kind of get that finality there, to have it off site, where you're actually having him in a graveyard, where you're actually having him put somebody in a graveyard, it lends itself so much more to that character and what you have seen with that character through the years. So I think this might be the right way to do it, because it's really hard with this being offsite, with this being produced, it's really hard for him to go back and poke holes in it. And because it's such an out there odd match to have, I don't feel like what he's been predisposed to, as far as a great match, okay, I've got to keep this rolling. A not great match, I've got to make up for it. This is kind of a one-off that hopefully the little bit that we as viewers have learned about Mark Calloway through this, hopefully this is not going to be something that requires that dragon to be chased further. this as a standalone is a nice encapsulation of the Undertaker and a career. And hopefully this gives him, that piece that he needs to leave it behind. And what this program did so brilliantly, and we talked about it from the first episode we covered, when you and I are discussing if we ever want to see him wrestle another match again. And what this did for the viewer is, I think it kind of took a little bit of that air that would be let out of each viewer once they found out this was going to be Taker's last match. It really got us as viewers to go along for the ride and say, okay, whenever you're ready, man, I'm ready for this to be the last match. I don't want to see you keep doing this to yourself. So I think so much of what was just brilliant about this documentary was the fact that, you're right there in the passenger seat and you're ready for it to be over whenever he wants it to be over. And in the final episode, for him to acknowledge that he's okay with this being it, I think that was an excellent journey for us to go on. And I am fine with this being the last match. And I honestly don't know, for the fans, you can say, oh, I want it to be in front of an arena. I want to be there. I want to be able to buy tickets. But to really empathize with the guy and to see kind of Mark Calloway's struggles with this in putting it to bed, I don't know that you can wish for a better way out than he got at this year's WrestleMania.
So in a normal situation, you would get a Ric Flair, you would get a Shawn Michaels, you would get an Edge or a Christian talking up to the point where it's going to be my last one. It's going to be my last one. It's going to be my last one. We were on the path with him the whole time that it was going to be his last one, but we didn't know we were on that path. So I felt that it could be his last one because when AJ Styles mentioned Mark Calloway, Michelle McCool, we're not going to be talking Undertaker anymore. We're going to be talking American Badass. We're going to be talking Mark Calloway here. He showed pictures from Instagram. He showed, Mark Calloway came back and cut that promo in the empty arena about, Alan, which is AJ's name. So I had a feeling we were on that path, but we never knew. I mean, maybe it was just a character transformation again. And another thing I want to bring up here is that while we all, again, like I said, I'm very content with a man working his way through and trying to be a perfectionist and master his craft. I'm very content as well with Mark Henry saying it. It took 5 episodes. It took all the way to the end of the episode. Mark Henry said, I have never, ever heard anybody say a bad thing about The Undertaker. They all wanted to be him. They all respected him. They all loved him. And Roman Reigns kept calling him the godfather of wrestling. Triple H, very poignant as well, saying that his legacy will be that he was able to do it this way. This is his legacy. So Undertaker, if you want to be in the Hall of Fame, all you have to do is tell Vince. He'll set it up. But you don't have to be if you don't want to. Your legacy is cemented. Undertaker's going to be one of those bronze statues in the hallways at WWE headquarters. He's already going to be that. They're going to make that statue. And if you want to be around the business and hang out like in baseball and football and basketball, how that all happens, go down to the Performance Center, go down to the PC and work with the boys for a little bit. That's always open to you too. You don't have to call. Just literally show up. Hey, Taker, what are you doing here? Hang out with the boys. All right, well, we'll bring the class in. That's all it's going to take. This guy has a blank check to do whatever he wants for the rest of his life because he's done his work. He has done his time. Thank you. We appreciate it. We love you. Thank you. You don't have to give us anymore. You've done it.
No, and I don't know how many people want to see him risk his body after watching this documentary. I don't know how many people actually want to see that with everything that's involved. And I'll tell you, I watched the Goldberg spot when it happened, but I had not gone back and watched that event again or gone out of my way to see, when he almost broke his neck. And they replayed that multiple times throughout this documentary. And my goodness, just how close that came to being horrific. I mean, it was a matter of inches away. And I mean, I thinking about it more and more, I think that, the match with Styles, it's AJ Styles, what a fitting last opponent. And again, you're not going to get a more seamless match than you had at WrestleMania. And I think it's just a very fitting way, and just that shot of him leaving on the bike. And you could tell that there was a sense of satisfaction that he had with the match that has not been apparent after these previous matches, because it's always that itch to, if it went well, an itch to do another one. If it did not go well, that just reflex of having to go out and prove himself, once again. In the post-match interviews after Mania, you did not see that. You got a very different sense of the guy and his sense of satisfaction with this.
Yeah, depending on where you stand on the MCU, or depending on where you stand on baseball or football or basketball, this felt like the culmination. Again, watching it, you didn't know you were in it. Like I said, I felt that maybe we were in it, but we didn't know that we were in it. This was the culmination, like at the end of Endgame, Avengers Endgame, that was a 22-23 movie culmination. We were satisfied. It was done. It was over. I'm not saying I'm moving on, because the man's a legend and he can come back and do whatever he wants. I don't need another match from him. I am content with him being content. To put a button on it, this was something I'm very proud to have watched, and I enjoyed every second of it.
Absolutely. And just, what a revolutionary step for WWE, and what the original content is they're putting on the network. There's been fun stuff. They've had very well done stuff, but this is, as far as I'm concerned, one of their first very serious pieces of, a long form piece of filmmaking. And they did an absolutely outstanding job with this.
Go ahead and say phenomenal, because that's really a word we heard about 10 to 15 times in the last episode here.
Oh,
and, having worked with Alan, AJ, technically somebody owes them a nickel, or AJ a nickel too, every time they kept calling, his work phenomenal. The match was phenomenal. Somebody better pay AJ, because you know what? He put in his work. And again, really, this is almost a, kind of a quiet, salute to AJ, because the man, the beast, the legend, the Undertaker wanted AJ Styles to be his final match. It's like saying, Babe Ruth wants you to pitch to him one last time.
And it's surreal when you hear us, talking about that all the time that we cover TNA, and, to think that we would eventually be talking about Taker potentially, very likely having his last match against AJ Styles, who was the guy that, was your Mr. TNA. It's just, it's surreal, and what a great job WWE. We talked about it, I think on our last broadcast, was, he was really that first guy that did not go through NXT. He entered the main roster at the Rumble, and they treated him like a star from the start.
Yep.
I think there's been a lot of holes that you could poke into the way they've treated a lot of talent that's come over, especially a lot of that TNA talent. But my goodness, they got the AJ thing right.
Wow. So folks, that is it. That's the swan song. That's the episode. It is over. The Undertaker 5-part documentary is done. Go rewatch it. I think I might rewatch it at some point. I don't know if it'll be this week or this month, but I think that's something I can watch again. I definitely want to rewatch that Boneyard match as well, because the first time I actually got to see it, I didn't get to hear it because I was somewhere where I didn't have audio. So, wow, Matthew, that I'm content. I'm happy. Normally we do a little AW or AEW and NXT preview. They're coming up tonight, but we're out of time, to be honest with you. So make sure you're watching the show. And remind Damian, by the way, that Fyter Fest does not score points in the PWR Fantasy Draft. Make sure you're reminding him. Why don't you send him a tweet at Damian Nelson and remind him that Fyter Fest from AEW does not score PWR Fantasy points. For Matthew Thomas, I'm the man they call Meathead. Thanks for stopping by. So long, everyone.